The coal mine. We fell for what seemed like an eternity, the air rushing past in a cold, relentless torrent, until we finally hit the bottom with a dull thud, the impact reverberating through the damp earth. Ogleflow landed gracefully on his feet, of course, his lithe form absorbing the descent with an effortless elegance, his cane tapping the ground as if to punctuate his composure. I, on the other hand, ended up crumpled in a heap, resembling a pile of dirty laundry, my limbs tangled and aching, my breath knocked out of me in a ragged gasp as I lay sprawled on the gritty floor, the coarse texture of coal dust biting into my skin. Disorientated, I took stock of our surroundings, my head spinning as I blinked against the suffocating gloom. As the dust settled, a fine, choking haze that stung my eyes and coated my tongue, my senses returned, sharpened by the stark reality of our new prison. I realized we were in what looked like an old coal mine, deep underground, its oppressive weight pressing down like a living thing. Its walls and ceilings were formed of rough, jagged rock, their surfaces scarred and unyielding, covered with dark soot that seemed to absorb what little light existed. Droplets of moisture had gathered together, glistening like tears in the dimness, and were running down the walls of the mine, leaving slick, shimmering trails that reflected the faint glow, each drip a mournful echo in the silence. The tunnel itself was low and narrow, its confines claustrophobic, forcing me to hunch as I stood. Beams of aged, cracked wood propped up the ceiling of the mine at measured intervals, their surfaces blackened by coal dust and weathered by years of damp rot. Their splintered edges sagging under the strain, as if groaning in protest against the earth's relentless pressure. In the dim light cast by flickering lanterns that hung along the walls, their rusted frames swaying slightly. The rocks glistened from their damp, wet coating, casting eerie, wavering shadows that danced like spectres. The constant dripping water echoed through the shaft, a relentless hollow rhythm that amplified the mine's desolation. The air was heavy with a musty, earthy smell, thick and cloying, mixed with the pungent odor of coal dust that clung to my clothes and filled my lungs. Each breath a gritty reminder of our subterranean prison. In the center of the tunnel ran rusted, narrow-gauge iron tracks, their warped lines leading deeper into the mine and disappearing into shadow, a path to an unseen abyss. The tracks, once smooth and gleaming, were now warped and slightly misaligned from years of wear, their uneven surfaces treacherous, glinting faintly with a patina of rust. Here and there, small piles of gravel and coal debris spilled onto the tracks, their jagged edges crunching underfoot, a testament to the mine's decay. Beside the rail tracks, heavy carts sat idle, their rust-streaked metal frames battered and broken, scarred by time and neglect. Each cart was mounted on sturdy iron wheels that once rolled smoothly but now creaked and groaned with every turn, their axles seized with rust. The carts themselves were deep, square containers with high sides, designed to hold loads of coal, their interiors black and glistening with a fine coating of dust that shimmered faintly in the lantern light. Some larger chunks of coal had spilled over the sides, landing on the ground beside the tracks, their jagged surfaces stark against the tunnel's gloom. These carts would once have been pulled by mules or small engines, their clatter a pulse of industry. Now they rested motionless, relics of a bygone era, their silence a heavy shroud. Every few feet along the tunnel, tools lay scattered, pickaxes with splintered handles, their wood warped and fraying, shovels caked with coal dust, their blades dulled by years of toil, and long-abandoned metal helmets with their broken lamps, their glass shattered and useless. These tools bore witness to man's long-forgotten presence, their rusted forms a haunting reminder of lives once lived in this subterranean world. In the distance, the faint sound of dripping water could still be heard, a constant mournful cadence that underscored the mine's damp, cold depths, each drop a tick of an unseen clock. In the farthest corners of the tunnel, the walls looked like they were closing into a claustrophobic darkness, where the air grew dense and cold, pressing against my chest like a tangible force. The oppressive atmosphere was palpable, as if the mine itself were a living, breathing thing, groaning under the weight of the earth above, its jagged maw ready to swallow us whole. The only hint of movement was the occasional rustle of dust settling, disturbed by a sudden draft that whispered through the tunnel, chilling my skin and stirring the fine hairs on my neck. Thinking back, that's how I describe it now, with the clarity of hindsight painting a vivid picture. But as a 10-year-old boy, I would have just said it was dark, cold, wet, and dirty. My child's mind distilling the terror and desolation into simple, stark truths that still carried the weight of fear. I was sitting on the ground, the rough, coal-dusted floor grating against my palms as I tried to rub the coal dust from my hands and clothes, its gritty texture smearing across my skin like a second shadow. The more I tried, the dirtier they became, the black powder clinging stubbornly, a mark of the mind's unyielding grip. I raised my head, my neck stiff with exhaustion, and looked at Ogleflow. He was sitting on the edge of an overturned rail cart, its rusted frame creaking faintly under his weight, legs crossed with an air of nonchalant grace. Both hands rested on his cane, its polished surface untouched by the mind's filth, and he was spotlessly clean, his vibrant attire gleaming as if impervious to the grime that enveloped me. His serene composure a stark contrast to my disheveled, dust-covered state. "How come this coal dust doesn't stick to you, but the wizard's blue powder did?" I asked, my voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of exasperation. The gritty coal dust still clinging to my hands like a stubborn shadow. Did it stick with me? Did it really, young fun? Or was it just me changing color? Ogleflow chuckled, his voice a warm, teasing lilt that echoed faintly off the jagged rock walls, his eyes twinkling with mischievous wisdom in the dim lantern light. "I don't understand. Why would you do that? He was going to eat you," I said with a puzzled look on my face, my brow furrowing as I tried to unravel his cryptic words, the memory of the wizard's sinister intent still vivid in my mind. "Eat me? No, no, no. That was never going to happen. It never happened, did it?" Ogleflow's tone was light, almost playful, as if the harrowing ordeal in the kitchen were a mere game, his confidence unshaken by the peril we'd faced. "But it could have," I said, my voice rising with a mix of fear and frustration, the what-ifs swirling in my chest like a gathering storm. "Are you trying to rewrite the past, young fun? Is that what you're doing? You were there, you saw it, you lived it. No one got eaten. End of story. Why try and change it unless you wanted me to be eaten? Did you?" Ogleflow looked at me with both eyes, their piercing gaze steady and probing, a playful challenge lurking beneath his calm exterior, his cane glinting faintly as he leaned forward. "No, I didn't want that," I said, my voice softening, a pang of guilt tugging at me for even entertaining the thought, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my dust-covered shirt. "Then let's close the chapter and move on." Ogleflow's words were firm, yet gentle, a call to let go of the fear that still clung to me like the coal dust on my skin. Ogleflow stood up, his movements fluid and graceful, his vibrant attire untouched by the mind's grime, a stark contrast to my disheveled state. I got to my feet, still hopelessly trying to brush the coal dust off my clothes, the coarse particles smearing further with each futile swipe, embedding themselves deeper into the fabric and my skin, a gritty reminder of our subterranean prison. "I have one more question," I said, my voice tentative, a spark of curiosity cutting through my lingering frustration. Ogleflow sat back down on the overturned rail cart, its rusted frame creaking faintly under his weight, and rested his cane across his knees. "What is it, young fun?" he asked, his tone warm and inviting, his eyes glinting with the promise of another enigmatic lesson. "Why did the wizard want your power?" I asked, my words hanging in the heavy, musty air, the question burning with the need to understand the madness we'd escaped. Ogleflow tapped his cane on the ground, its polished tip striking the coal-strewn floor with a soft, rhythmic clink, and rotated it at the same time, the motion deliberate and thoughtful. I could tell he was thinking of a way to explain it to me so I would understand, his gaze drifting briefly to the flickering lanterns as if seeking inspiration in their wavering light. He began, "The wizard believes his power lies in his potions, trinkets, and charms, and when his potions have been used up, and his trinkets and charms are lost, he feels powerless. He is stuck in a cycle of his own making because of his beliefs. His voice was measured, each word carefully chosen, resonating with a quiet profundity that seemed to still the dripping water's echo for a moment. "So he wanted to eat you because he thought that would give him power," I said, my mind grappling with the concept, the wizard's grotesque ambition now framed in a new light. "That's correct, young Fun. The real power lies within yourself, and it's only your beliefs that hold you back." Ogleflow's eyes locked onto mine, their intensity urging me to see beyond the surface, to grasp the truth hidden in his words. "So you shouldn't have beliefs?" I asked, my voice tinged with confusion, the idea both intriguing and unsettling, like a riddle I couldn't yet solve. "Not so, young Fun. Beliefs create stories, circumstances, and happenstance. Beliefs create and destroy worlds. What you believe is what you will experience. It's okay to have beliefs, just don't be afraid to let them go when they no longer serve you." His words flowed like a river, smooth and profound, carrying a weight that settled into my heart, stirring a flicker of understanding amidst the coal mine's oppressive gloom. "Do you have beliefs, Ogleflow?" I asked, leaning forward, eager to glimpse the inner workings of his enigmatic mind. "I am a Flochi. I believe in everything and nothing at the same time. I use beliefs as a tool to experience, but I don't have to be here. I can choose a different belief, and I will be gone. The trouble is, that's too easy and not much fun." Ogleflow's grin widened, a spark of delight dancing in his eyes, his cane twirling playfully as if to underscore the joy he found in the challenge. "If I change my belief that we are in a coal mine to walking in a forest, would it happen?" I asked, my voice brimming with hope, the idea of escaping this damp, cold prison igniting a spark of possibility. "Why don't you give it a go?" Ogleflow said, with a large grin spreading across his face, his expression alight with encouragement, as if he already knew the outcome but relished watching me try. I closed my eyes, squeezing them tight, and tried hard to believe I was walking in a forest, picturing sun-dappled leaves and the scent of pine. But I could feel the cold and damp of the mine surrounding me, its jagged walls pressing in, the air heavy with the weight of earth and stone. The smell of coal dust filled my nostrils, acrid and inescapable, and the sound of dripping water echoed in my ears, a relentless reminder of our reality. My senses would not let me forget where I was, anchoring me to the mine's grim truth. I opened my eyes, tears of frustration welling up, and cried with frustration, my voice cracking with the weight of my failure. "I can't do it," I said, as I picked up a lump of coal, its rough, glistening surface cold in my hand, and threw it against the cold, damp wall of the mine, the impact sending a dull thud reverberating through the tunnel, a fleeting release of my pent-up anger. Ogleflow stood up, his presence steady and reassuring, and put his hand on my shoulder, its warmth cutting through the mine's chill. "It's not easy to change your beliefs. Your senses will always reinforce them. What you can do is create new, small beliefs that your senses cannot deny," he said, his voice gentle yet firm, a guiding light in the darkness, urging me to find a path forward. "Like what?" I asked, my voice small but eager, clinging to his words like a lifeline. "Do you believe there is a way out of this mine?" Ogleflow's question was simple, yet it carried a weight that stirred my resolve. "Yes, I do," I replied, a spark of certainty igniting in my chest, the idea of escape a tangible hope. "Do you believe it's this way?" Ogleflow pointed down the mine, his cane gesturing toward the shadowed tunnel, its rusted tracks vanishing into the gloom. "Yes, I do," I replied with a smile, the gesture small but genuine, a flicker of confidence blooming amidst the coal dust and damp, bolstered by Ogleflow's unwavering belief in me. "Let me tell you something, young Fun. You wouldn't want to be like me, believing in everything and nothing at the same time. I can change my experience with a click of my fingers, and that's no fun. It's like playing a game that's impossible to lose. What's the point?" Ogleflow's voice was rich and warm, carrying a wistful undertone that echoed faintly off the jagged, soot-covered walls of the coal mine, his words weaving a spell of introspection in the flickering lantern light. "The joy is in the journey, and I'm on this journey with you. You helped me find my joy. The destination is just a rest point between journeys. A life of destinations without the journey is no life at all." His eyes sparkled with a profound gratitude, their glint a beacon in the oppressive gloom, his cane resting lightly against the rusted rail cart as he leaned forward, his presence a steady anchor amidst the mind's damp chill. I came to understand that Ogleflow had tied himself to me, a revelation that settled into my heart like a quiet truth, heavy with meaning. It was my journey we were on, my creations shaping the path through this subterranean labyrinth, and Ogleflow was along for the ride, his enigmatic presence a willing companion in the unfolding story of my fears and triumphs. The realization stirred a mix of awe and responsibility within me, my 10-year-old mind grappling with the weight of being the architect of our shared adventure. Ogleflow took my hand, his grip warm and reassuring, his fingers calloused yet gentle, and we set off into the deep, dark depths of the mine, the rusted iron tracks stretching into the shadowed unknown, their warped surfaces glinting faintly under the lantern's wavering glow. The air grew denser with each step, thick with the musty scent of damp earth and the acrid tang of coal dust, the constant drip of water echoing like a mournful heartbeat through the narrow tunnel. I had asked him how the wizard had become trapped in the repetitive cycle of his beliefs, my curiosity burning brighter than the fear that still lingered in my chest, the question a lifeline to understanding the chaos we'd escaped. Ogleflow explained, his voice steady and measured, each word deliberate as it cut through the mind's oppressive silence. Every belief starts small, like a pinprick of light, he said, gesturing with his cane toward a distant lantern, its faint glow a solitary star in the darkness. And how we feed it and let it grow. The tunnel seemed to listen, its jagged walls absorbing his words as the dripping water punctuated his pauses. He continued, for example, you might believe in lucky charms and believe it works when you have it with you. That's the first step in giving your power away. Soon you won't leave the house without it. You may have angry outbursts if someone touches or moves it. Now you are heading down a dark path and your world begins to crumble just a little bit, the cracks spiderwebbing through your peace. His tone grew somber, his eyes distant, as if seeing the wizard's descent unfold. It's at this point you should turn back and walk a new path, but the wizard didn't. The words hung heavy in the air, mingling with the coal dust, a cautionary tale etched into the mind's damp, cold depths. When he reached this point, he carried on down the path of that belief in magic and potions, Ogleflow explained, his cane tapping the ground softly, its rhythm a counterpoint to the dripping water. It's a limiting belief, and the wizard had reached those limits and was stuck in that cycle. The wizard doesn't want to change that belief because he has invested so much time and energy walking down that path, and it's such a long way back. His voice carried a note of pity, tempered by wisdom, as he navigated the warped tracks, their rusted surfaces crunching faintly underfoot. The tunnel seemed to tighten around us, its claustrophobic walls mirroring the wizard's self-imposed prison, the air growing colder, denser, as if the mine itself were a manifestation of trapped beliefs. Examine your beliefs daily, Ogleflow said, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that pierced the gloom, his words a clarion call that resonated in my chest. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Does it serve me? If not, let it go. Do not get stuck in the cycle of limiting beliefs. His voice was both a challenge and an invitation, urging me to look within, to sift through the layers of fear and doubt that clung to me like the coal dust on my clothes. The lanterns flickered, casting wavering shadows that danced across his face, illuminating the quiet conviction in his expression, a guidepost in the mind's desolate expanse. We walked in silence for a while, the only sounds the crunch of coal debris underfoot and the relentless drip of water echoing through the tunnel, as I tried to make sense of what Ogleflow had told me. My young, inexperienced mind struggled to understand what I called at the time grown-up talk, the weight of his philosophical insights swirling in my head like a fog, their meaning just out of reach, teasing the edges of my comprehension. The mind's damp, cold air clung to my skin, its musty scent of earth and coal dust a constant reminder of our subterranean prison, each breath heavy with the weight of the unknown. Off into the distance, I could see a faint glow of light, a solitary beacon piercing the oppressive gloom, its soft radiance a promise of something beyond the endless dark. I pointed to it, my finger trembling slightly, and looked up at Ogleflow, seeking reassurance in his familiar presence. He looked concerned. One eye was on me, steady and searching, the other looking behind us, its gaze sharp and wary, scanning the shadowed depths. I turned my head to see what he was looking at, my heart quickening with a prickle of unease. I could only see about 10 feet ahead, the dim visibility, a fragile bubble in the suffocating blackness. Beyond that lay the deep dark black of the coal mine, following us like a predator stalking its prey, its inky tendrils waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike and envelop us in a cloak of pitch-black darkness for all eternity. At the time, it never occurred to me how we could even see the 10 feet. The mystery of our sight, a quiet enigma. There was no source of light this far down the mine, yet somehow we, or at least I, just could. The faint illumination a strange gift in the tunnel's desolate expanse. "What is it? What's wrong?" I asked, my voice a timid whisper, barely audible over the dripping water, fear tightening my throat as I searched Ogleflow's face for answers. Ogleflow trained both his eyes on me, their intensity cutting through the gloom like a blade. "Let's pick up the pace a bit," he said, his tone clipped and urgent, a rare crack in his usual calm that sent a shiver racing down my spine. He stretched out his long legs, his vibrant attire a fleeting splash of color against the mine's monochrome desolation, and lengthened his stride, his cane tapping the rusted tracks with purposeful rhythm. I was half walking, half jogging, my small legs straining to keep up, my breath coming in short, frantic puffs as I struggled to match his relentless pace. Ogleflow was worried about something, his tension palpable in the set of his shoulders, but he wasn't going to let on what or why, his silence a wall I couldn't breach. I kept pressing him for an answer, my voice rising with insistent pleas, but he just kept marching forward, dragging me with him, his grip on my hand firm and unyielding, pulling me through the tunnel's claustrophobic embrace. There is nothing more frightening than staring into the deepest black, expecting something evil and grotesque to slowly emerge with huge claws and large fangs, drooling with anticipation of the meal to come. The unseen threat loomed in my mind, conjuring vivid images of monstrous shapes lurking just beyond sight, their presence a heavy weight that pressed against my chest, each step a gamble against the darkness's hunger. My attention was captured by the sound of metal striking rock, a sharp, rhythmic clang that cut through the tunnel's eerie quiet, drawing my gaze forward. The faint glow of light that had been so far off in the distance was now just ahead, its soft radiance illuminating a grim tableau. I could make out the figure of a man striking at the rock face with a pickaxe. His movements mechanical, yet desperate, each blow sending a tremor through the tunnel and a shower of coal dust cascading to the floor. He didn't notice me as I stopped right behind him, my breath shallow, my heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. Ogleflow let go of my hand, his touch lingering briefly, and walked a short distance ahead to inspect a rail cart that was slightly dislodged from the rail track. Its rusted wheels skewed at an awkward angle, creaking faintly as he nudged it with his cane. The man looked old, tired and weathered, his frame gaunt yet sinewy, as if carved from the mine itself. He was stripped to the waist, his skin glistening with a sheen of sweat that mingled with the coal dust, painting him in streaks of black and grey. His body was thin but muscular, each movement revealing the taut strength of a life spent toiling in the dark. On his head was a dented metal hat, its surface pocked with scars of countless impacts, tilting slightly as he worked. His face was blackened with coal dust, a mask of grime that made him seem part of the mine's very walls, but the whites of his eyes shone through like tiny windows to his soul, bright and haunting in their intensity. Hanging on a rafter just by his head was an old oil lamp, its low-burning light emitting a faint wavering glow that cast long, distorted shadows across the rock face, its flame flickering as if struggling to survive in the damp air. "Hello," I said in a timid tone, my voice barely a whisper, as his pickaxe struck the rock face with a resounding clang, the sound reverberating through the tunnel like a tolling bell. He did not respond and struck the rock face for a second time, his focus unbroken, his movements driven by a single-minded fervor. I took a deep breath, the air heavy with the scent of coal and damp earth, and said, "Hello, Again, my voice a little louder, trembling with the effort to reach him. As the pickaxe struck the rock face for the third time, he stopped, the sudden silence deafening in its intensity. Slowly he turned his head to look at me, his eyes locking onto mine with a piercing, almost feral intensity, before withdrawing the pickaxe and lining it up for a fourth blow, his movements deliberate, as if weighing my presence. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice quivering, the question hanging in the musty air like a fragile thread. "Doing," he snapped, his voice rough and gravelly, laced with a manic edge that sent a chill down my spine. "Digging for gold, boy, digging for gold." His words were fervent, almost a chant, as if the idea of gold were the only thing tethering him to reality. "But this is a coal mine," I replied, my tone tentative, confusion knitting my brow as I gestured to the blackened walls surrounding us. "Coal mine? Coal mine?" he screamed, his voice exploding through the tunnel, a raw, anguished cry that rattled the lanterns and sent a cascade of dust drifting from the ceiling. "There's no coal here, boy. Gold, only gold," he said, his eyes blazing with a desperate conviction, his hands tightening around the pickaxe's splintered handle as if it were his lifeline. Suddenly he turned and grabbed me, his calloused fingers digging into my arms like iron clamps, sniffing me like a rat sniffing for cheese, his breath hot and sour against my face. "Got any food?" he said, his voice a low, urgent growl, his eyes wild with hunger. I had no time to answer, my words caught in my throat, before he pushed me to the floor like an unwanted piece of rotten meat, my body jarring against the cold, coal-strewn ground, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. "Gold. I must have gold before my flame burns out," he muttered, his voice trembling with obsession as he turned to his lamp, his movements frantic. He started to turn up the wick, the flame dancing wildly, flickering with a desperate intensity before vanishing into a small puff of smoke. The sudden darkness, a gut punch of finality. He grabbed the lamp with both hands, shook it furiously, his movements jerky and unhinged, and then dropped it to the floor, the metal clanging against the rock with a hollow crash that echoed through the tunnel. His body stiffened, a statue frozen in despair, and slowly turned black, starting at his feet and rising to the top of his head. The transformation eerie and relentless, like ink spreading through water. He cried out in disbelief, a raw, heart-wrenching wail that pierced the silence, his time finally come to an end. The light faded from his eyes, their bright windows dimming to lifeless voids, as his body began to crack, crumble, and fall into a small pile of coal, the fragments scattering across the floor with a soft, mournful rustle. A tragic monument to his unyielding belief. "Did you see that?" I shouted to Ogleflow, my voice cracking with awe and horror, the image of the miner's crumbling form seared into my mind as I pointed back to the small pile of coal, its dark fragments glinting faintly in the lantern's wavering glow. "Come and help me get this rail cart back on the track," he said, his tone calm yet insistent, his hands already gripping the rusted edge of the overturned cart, its warped frame creaking under his touch. I ran over to Ogleflow, my bare feet crunching against the coal-strewn floor, and pointed back to the pile of coal, my arm trembling with urgency. "Did you see it?" I said again, my voice rising, desperate for him to acknowledge the miner's tragic end. "Where do you think all this coal came from?" he replied, his eyes meeting mine with a solemn weight, his words carrying the gravity of a hard-earned truth. They blackened their hearts and diminished their light in the search for riches. "That's a lesson for you, young fun. Always take care of your light, or you may end up as a lump of coal." His voice was steady, resonant, cutting through the mind's damp chill, each syllable a warning etched in the flickering shadows. What did Ogleflow mean by that? I like to think he meant take care of your own light, the light of your soul, before you go searching for gold. Put the light of God first, or you may end up with a black heart of coal, I mused, the thought settling into my chest like a quiet revelation, though its full meaning eluded my 10-year-old mind, swirling in the haze of fear and wonder. I could hear a faint rumbling in the mineshaft behind us, a low, ominous growl that vibrated through the jagged rock walls, growing steadily louder, like the approach of an unseen beast. Ogleflow asked me again to help him get the rail cart back on the tracks, his voice sharper now, but I was distracted and fearful of the rumbling sound approaching from behind, its menacing cadence tightening the knot of panic in my stomach. Ogleflow shouted, "Help me with the rail cart!" His words slicing through the air, but I was frozen with fear, my legs rooted to the coal-dusted floor, my breath shallow and ragged as the rumbling swelled into a deafening roar. Ogleflow stopped what he was doing, his movements deliberate, and put his hand on my shoulder, its warmth a lifeline in the suffocating gloom. "Young Fun, the mine is flooding. Do you want to stay here and drown?" he asked, his voice calm but piercing, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that demanded action. I struggled to get the word no out of my mouth, my throat constricted by terror, so I shook my head in response, my eyes wide with desperation. The thought of drowning in the mine's cold, dark depths, a nightmare too vivid to bear. "Then help me with this damn rail cart," he screamed, his voice a thunderclap that shattered my paralysis, jolting me into action with a surge of adrenaline. We gathered some old rail sleepers, their splintered wood heavy with damp rot, and used them to lever the rail cart back onto the tracks, the rusted metal groaning in protest as we heaved with all our strength, the cart lurching into place with a jarring clang. The rumbling sound was getting louder, a relentless crescendo that shook the tunnel, sending cascades of dust and pebbles raining from the ceiling. Ogleflow lifted me into the rail cart, his hands swift and sure, the cart's cold, rust-streaked interior biting into my skin as I scrambled to brace myself. There was quite a steep gradient leading into the mine, and as Ogleflow pushed, his muscles straining, the cart quickly picked up speed, its iron wheels screeching against the warped tracks. He jumped in the cart just as a frothing dark wall of water appeared behind him, a towering, churning maelstrom, crashing and smashing through the tunnel, carrying with it all the debris the mine had to offer. Broken timbers, rusted tools, and jagged chunks of coal, roaring with a primal fury that drowned out all else. Into the mine we raced, faster and faster, the cart rattling violently as it hurtled along the tracks, the air whipping past in a cold, relentless torrent. I was sure the cart was going to leave the tracks, its frantic pace threatening to derail us into the jagged walls as the wall of water gained on us, its frothy tendrils reaching out and lashing against the back of the cart in a desperate attempt to overtake us, each icy splash a stinging reminder of its relentless pursuit. I went beyond fear at this point, the terror so overwhelming that it numbed my senses. My brain struggling to keep up with the chaos, teetering on the verge of passing out, my vision blurring at the edges. When I looked up at Ogleflow, he was standing tall in the cart, proud and unwavering, like a captain of a ship sailing into certain doom. His vibrant attire a defiant splash of color against the mine's monochrome desolation, his cane gripped firmly, his expression resolute. He looked down at me as I cowered in the bottom of the cart, my body curled against the cold metal, and smiled. A warm, reassuring curve of his lips that sparked a flicker of courage in my chest. It gave me the strength to lift my head and peek over the edge of the cart, my fingers gripping the rusted rim with white-knuckled desperation. I wished I hadn't. Up ahead was a huge cavern, its vast, yawning maw illuminated by a faint, ghostly glow. The rail tracks twisted into a spiral, following the walls of the cavern, a dizzying descent into the unknown. As we followed the tracks and spiraled downwards, the G-force pushed me against the side of the cart, the metal biting into my back, my stomach churning violently with the relentless motion. The contents of my stomach were forced into my mouth, a bitter surge that spilled out onto the bottom of the cart, the acrid taste lingering as I gasped for air, the world spinning in a nauseating blur. The wall of water surged past us, a roaring torrent flowing straight down the middle of the cavern as we circled around it, its dark, debris-laden mass a chaotic vortex that threatened to swallow us whole. The spiral tightened and our speed increased, the cart's wheels shrieking in protest, until we finally plunged deep into the murky waters below, a suffocating mix of mud and debris collected on its journey through the mine, the cold shock enveloping me like a vice. I was pulled left, then right, tossed up and down, my body dragged in every direction by the churning current, my lungs burning for air as I fought against the relentless pull. Suddenly, there was daylight, a blinding burst of radiance that pierced the darkness, and I managed to grab a breath of air, its crisp freshness a lifeline before I was carried over a waterfall, plummeting into the clear, fresh water below, the impact jarring my bones as bubbles swirled around me in a frantic dance. I fought my way to the surface, my arms flailing, and took another large, deep breath of fresh air, the taste of freedom sweet against my tongue. At the river's edge, I could see Ogleflow sitting on a boulder, calm and collected, his vibrant attire untouched by the ordeal, his cane resting across his knees as he watched me with that familiar, unshakable serenity. I swam over to the riverbank, my strokes weak and trembling, and dragged my tired, beaten body out of the water, the muddy shore clinging to my skin as I collapsed at his feet, my chest heaving, my limbs heavy with exhaustion. "This isn't the world you promised me," I said, my voice a hoarse whisper laced with disappointment and fatigue, the weight of the harrowing journey pressing down on me like the mine's stone walls. "On the contrary, young fun, this is exactly the world I promised you," Ogleflow replied, his voice warm and steady, carrying the quiet conviction of truth. "A world where dreams come true. Just be careful what you dream about. If you want to be strong, you must first carry a heavy burden. If you want to succeed, you must overcome fear. If you want to be loved, you must first learn how to love." His words were a gentle challenge, each one settling into my heart, reshaping my understanding of the trials we'd faced, his serene gaze a beacon of wisdom in the sunlight's golden glow. I had thought I was walking into paradise when I took a bite of that mushroom, its strange, earthy flavor a gateway to adventure. In truth, it was more like a school. And I hated school, its lessons harsh and unrelenting. Yet now, lying on the riverbank, I felt the stirrings of something new, a hard-won resilience forged in the crucible of fear and survival.